Taoiseach, I want to appeal to you again in relation to the government's attitude to preventing people ending up homeless. Obviously, I think it was an absolutely disastrous decision for you to lift the eviction ban, because the majority of people who end up homeless do so because they are evicted through no fault of their own. But the other element to why people end up homeless is because, just to cite the example that I'm looking at the moment, is a mother and her child. She's working in a supermarket, just got a good promotion, but she was living in her family home. Her family are selling up, and she and her daughter are facing homelessness. And as she writes, I've done everything. I've called everyone for a place to rent or live in. Everywhere in this area is $2,800 a month to $3,000. I can show you every example and email I've sent to thousands. In her case, she finally found an apartment for €2,400. And it accepts HAP. You can't find them anywhere that will accept HAP. I was lucky to find this place, but now she's been discovered that that's too high for her to get HAP, and they won't accept her to give a top-up, as you know, because it's considered too high. Now, that is a situation that is facing huge numbers of working people. Some of them aren't even on social housing lists because their income is too high, as I've pointed out relentlessly to you, so they're not even entitled to HAP. There has to be something done about this, right? Because more and more, we're going to have the figures out on Friday of people who should not be homeless, who are doing everything they can to source accommodation, the vast majority of whom are working and contributing to our society, and they can't find anywhere, and they end up homeless because the government doesn't have an attitude to say, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that you don't end up homeless and make the changes and put in the schemes necessary to ensure that is the case.
I think Deputy Boyd Barrett said that the majority of people who end up in emergency accommodation are there due to eviction or notices to quit. I don't think that's quite correct. I think it's more in around a third, with other reasons making up something close to 2/3. But we do need better data in this area. And we fund prevention services because it is much better to prevent people becoming homeless than having to try to find emergency accommodation and then accommodation for them after that. We certainly encourage people to engage with threshold. A lot of notices to quit are invalid and they're rejected when challenged. And we're really scaling up the tenant in situ scheme, which in fairness to Deputy Boyd Barrett, he was a very strong advocate for some time ago. And we have about 3,000 of those now in process. And this is where the council or an approved housing body buys the house if the landlord is selling up, and that allows the social housing tenant to move from a HAP tenancy to a much more secure permanent social housing tenancy. And we have increased the social housing income limits, and I'm sure we will do so again. Deputy Callan mentioned some of the reports that would indicate the impact that government schemes can have on house prices. There are different reports saying different things. You know, I've seen reports contradicting each other as to whether Help to Buy increased house prices or not. Haven't seen the particular one that you referred to. New builds are more expensive than older homes for lots of reasons. They're built to a much higher standard. They're built to, and also building costs have soared. You know, anyone who's building a house will tell you how much building costs have soared in the last year or so, and anyone who's bought an old house and had to renovate it and bring it up to modern standard will tell you how much that costs. But speaking of different reports and different analysis, I saw a very interesting graph that was put together by the gentleman who's behind Crazy House Prices, which I know a lot of people would follow, a very interesting account on Instagram, looking at the ratio of house prices to incomes. And this person would not be a Fine Gael supporter, but produces very good testimony and very good evidence. And I thought that was very interesting, because what matters most in terms of house prices is not just the number, but the relativity to income and also interest rates. And what it showed is that if you go back to the 70s or 80s, you could buy a house for roughly 4 times somebody's average income. That really soared in the 90s to about 8 times an average income. Actually peaked 20 years ago at around 8 times incomes, and since then has gone up and down a bit, but more or less 7.4 at the moment, and probably falling again now that incomes are rising faster than house prices. So that was an interesting analysis to see that The peak was in 2020, and since then it's kind of stayed around 7 to 8 times, and that would be that kind of surprised me, given a lot of what I hear in the House. Finally, Deputy Murphy, raised the issue of safety of international protection applicants. Obviously, government has a duty of care when it comes to providing safety for people in any state-funded facility, and we do take measures to try and ensure that. And we have a particular fund as well to recognise local communities that have accepted international protection applicants and Ukrainian people into their areas. But I might provide more detail in correspondence about that to the Deputy.